No, like,
Come on, it didn't deserve all that. Now,
He folded him up like a cheap card table.
Anyway,
oh,
I was.
Koko used to be 6'6".
you were gonna take him in the lot and beat the shit out of him after that.
I would apologize.
Well, Mark, it's a
Ready?
little crowded here today.
It is a little crowded. We actually have a guest.
We have a guest.
Man, you're brave.
I'm
I
excited.
mean, we're setting podcasting back at least 10 years. So we are in the process of faking it until we make it.
100%.
And we hadn't made it yet, but we're still grinding away at it. But man, we really appreciate you coming out, because I know you've been out grinding and doing some great things with your show.
Having fun, kicking butt.
But man, well, that's as long as you're having fun, man.
Yeah.
But I just, you just told me that you had sold out the Garden.
Yeah.
I mean, the Garden was always such a special place for me. Like I hated getting there, like going into the city and doing all that. But once you're in the Garden, it's just such an iconic building. The Garden, a lot of people that know, was the first venues. Like when you walk the halls and it has all the performers that have played there.
Oh yeah.
They were the first ones to do that. Now there's a lot of them that do it, but I mean, it was always cool. The dressing room that I used, like as soon as I would walk out, the first person I see is Muhammad Ali when he's fighting Frazier, and then make a quick left and there's Elvis, right? And it's so cool, and it was so kind of ahead of its time. But man, when you sell the Garden out, brother,
Oh yeah, it's soaked in history. I was there for I went with Joe for the first UFC at the Garden, and was lucky enough to get to sit right behind him, right against the octagon, and yeah, when I was backstage for it, it was just, and I snuck out, we have the super pass or whatever to where like you can kind of just go any direction. You can go up the stands. I could go from where the fighters come out. It's kind of like an all access thing. Everybody at the UFC knows me because it's been like a decade and a half of traveling with him and working with him. So it's kind of like I'm part of the crew, but very rarely do I do this thing that I did at MSG, which is like, I'll just go right over and up the stands and right up the stairway. And yeah, the lap around that joint is crazy. And MSG to me, even though of course all those great things that have happened there, our timelines are a little different. To me, MSG represents, WrestleMania 1, WrestleMania 2.
Yeah.
I mean, that is, that joint where it's like, wow, they put all their money up, took a chance.
Big chance.
It represents to me gambling on yourself. You know what I mean?
Yep. Absolutely.
And yeah, when I saw, I think it's Roddy Piper's boots and Hogan's boots or something like that, or something. And there's a picture of everything that was going on there in those glass cases. It really sunk in. And Rogan was scheduled to do a stand-up there. I think it was scheduled for, I think it was October of 2020. So when March came around and they're like, things are closing down. And we're like, okay, sure, they're closing down. Maybe for a couple weeks or something. What are we talking about here? And man, all I was thinking about March, April, May, June, I was just obsessed with this idea of having the middle of Madison Square Garden, because we do these arenas in the round, not just all the way to the side.
Right.
And I just pictured, I'm like, I want to do my 20 minutes. It's by yourself, 20 minutes, you and a microphone.
Right.
And I was picturing it again and again and again. And sure enough, of course, as we all know, gets rescheduled again, gets rescheduled again. And luckily, and I mean, it was the story. When I was in a low during that pandemic, I would tell my girlfriend or whoever I was whining to, I'm supposed to be doing frickin' Madison Square Garden, and here I am stuck, whatever. And it finally got rescheduled, and it was a go, and we did it, and we had a blast. And to think that my silly, goofy podcast is now doing 2 nights there, I think it has to have something to do with that manifestation, or putting it out, and as corny as it sounds, talking about it and wanting it and putting it out there in the universe, how bad I wanted it during that whole time, because I never would have guessed. I mean, it was the story of my pandemic, just me opening for 20 minutes.
Right.
And now I'm pretty sure it's the first podcast to ever do Madison Square Garden.
That's great.
Yeah, we're so pumped.
Have you ever performed there before? I mean, have you?
No,
You never?
No, not until I opened for Joe on that show that we finally got to do a year or 2 ago. But yeah, that's not a normal thing. Doing stand up at Madison Square Garden.
No, not at all.
It's a short list of people that have gotten to do that. And
That's incredible. Yeah. The garden too. Not only is like being in the garden, but you got to have your A game too, because the New Yorkers, man, they don't mess around. They will let you know, like, if in a match you're stinking the joint out. Oh my gosh, there is no gratuitous like, oh, okay, well, they're trying. No,
Right.
they let you know it, man. And it's
How special was it for you for them to light up the garden in purple?
I was blown away. Like, you know, I had no clue, right, until I rolled up on the place, and it was kind of crazy because, like, I knew that was going to be my last time in the garden, in front of a crowd, and then they lit it up purple, and I was just like, oh, I got all kind of feels and all that. I was just like, well, you can't go in there with your eyes all watery, but that place is it is. It was just like such an iconic venue to work, and I mean, it was the home. It was the home of the WWE. Really, that was the way it was. We always considered it, because the old man was always there. It was more run like a pay-per-view. Even our live events, our non-televised live events, there were, and we sold it out. When we got hot there in the Attitude Era, man, it was that place. There's no better place to work once you're there and in there than the garden. So
That's insane. That I mean, for Kill Tony, it's #1 live podcast in the world, right?
Yeah.
And this thing, how did it start? How did you? Because to me, I think it is. Because I went to the New Year's Eve show at HEB Center, and I'm sitting out there watching it, going, man, we can't even figure out how to do a podcast in a studio with just 2 people.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there watching what you're doing, and I'm like, how in the world?
Yeah.
So how did this start, and how in the world are you able to put that type of podcast together weekly?
Well, I was hosting at the Comedy Store, where comedians would do 3-minute long sets, and I would go up in between each comedian and kind of make fun of them, or maybe say, hey, by the way, that joke would work if you had the punchline at the end, like if you would have said boom, and then the crowd would laugh. So it was kind of like I was giving advice or annihilating them, roasting them, like one more time for the, clowny Down syndrome guy, or whatever I would say, anything. And
I love Down syndrome.
I popped it. I don't even.
yeah, exactly. You didn't even get to see him, but you can picture him.
Yeah.
But I always, and everybody was starting podcasts, and I really thought I was late to the party. That's the interesting part, is like everybody kind of already had their podcast going for a few years, and they're like, Tony, when are you going to start your podcast? I was in the Rogan universe, and all those guys already had theirs: Segura, Burt, Joey Diaz, Red Band, and just everybody, Duncan, Ari. So I was the last one to start one, because I didn't really want to do one.
Not quite.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. Here we are.
We must be the cleanup crew.
We are. We're getting the
I
scraps
didn't
over here.
interrupt, but I'm just thinking, like, man, we're a little behind the 8 ball here.
Maybe, but this is like, who knows? Because this is the whole thing now. But I wanted it to be different, and when talking to comedians in a in a studio like this type of setup, I always feel like tight. I get a little daydreamy. You know, I like an audience. Even the fact that there's like people walking around here and sitting over there, whatever that doofus over there is doing. You know what I mean?
Hopefully
Like
making
it
us
gives
money.
like there to be an opportunity. It makes it feel more open. Whereas like in Rogan's studio, it's just you and him. And yeah, Jamie's over there, but he's like behind a monitor, and it's just like it's hard to really just stare and listen to one person for me. And so I wanted something that would like keep me excited and make me want to be funny, because I also find it hard to be funny with just one or two people. Especially if there's microphones and stuff. So anyway, I was just like, I think I should do this type of a open mic format, but I think 3 minutes is too long of a set for somebody to do. I think it should be 1 minute. That's enough to get to know at least if they're funny or if they're entertaining, and then I can interview them from there, because I kind of wanted to do a thing where I was just interviewing random people, like of different occupations, maybe the audience members, but that was a little, you know, that gets a little wonky too. So I put it all together, 1 minute comedy sets, and then I interview them afterwards, try to figure out more material that they could talk about or something. And I could still make fun of them, obviously, which is my bread and butter. So the rest is history. Week 1, I think there was like 8 people there. 4 of them signed up for the show. Week 2, there was 12 and 5 signups, and so on and so on. And we ended up, you know, it was just such a wild experiment. Just one camera and one tiny little recording device plugged into 4 microphones. And that was it. It just kept growing. And still, you know, somehow it's still doing that. You know, we keep it raw, and we work alongside of, we try to follow the rules as closely as we can. We bleep the things that we have to bleep. But for that live audience, we play it live, and we're giving them the goods that, you know, or at least we're trying to be something that just feels real, you know.
And it does. And that's what I think is pretty unique about it, and what's made it successful. And you guys don't hold back on those folks when they come up there.
I was raised in the Attitude Era. I mean, like everything
what about
now,
tough love?
everything now is soft to me. Because like this is exactly, I mean, I saw it all. That was every Saturday, Monday, you know, whatever it was back then, Tuesday or Thursday. I can't remember. I think it was Tuesday SmackDown back then.
But yeah, we would tape on Tuesday and it would air on Friday. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you had the Saturday Superstars and stuff like that.
Exactly.
The main event,
The show
Saturday
you
night
just
main events.
would hate when you got to TV and said, like, I got to do Superstars.
Yeah. But I had my routine down, man. I had these frozen pierogies, these Mrs. T's frozen pierogies. You know what I'm talking about? They're like potato and onion frozen. It was a little box like that. And I would get my TV tray, put it in the living room. I'd boil water, and I would take an onion. It's kind of disgusting thinking about it now. Take a half an onion, slice it up real good, take a quarter of a stick of butter, throw it in a frying pan, heat the butter up, take the half an onion sliced and throw it in the frying pan, boil the pierogies, and have it all. I would have it timed out so that by the time I took this plate with basically just a plate of potato and noodles and pierogies. Basically, I did. I was raised really poor, super poor, and but I would sit there and boom, the fires would start, and whatever the entrance was back then. Oh, totally, man.
Yeah.
And that was every Monday, and it had all of my attention, and super WWE loyal guy. Like I would watch WCW, but I'd kind of watch it like that the whole time with this
Where'd you
look
grow
on my
up?
face.
Ohio, right?
Youngstown, Ohio.
Yeah. So WCW, I grew up in the South, and that was like the
different.
product, right?
Exactly.
And
To us, it was
Who's your
always-
guy?
I mean, it's the greatest of all time, brother. There's only one. When we talk about wrestling, it is the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. There's no others. The thing is when you talk about Mount Rushmores, you have Ric Flair, and then you can go talk about your Mount Rushmore. You can't
even start without Rick on.
You don't even put him on there
You don't
because
put-
it's unfair to everybody else. The Mount Rushmore now for wrestling is just 3 people. That's all you can tell me
Who's
I'm
the
wrong.
3?
For me?
Yeah. What do you mean it's 3? Why is it only 3?
Because Rick has that spot no matter what.
I see.
But it's really easy. I don't know. Understand why people even debate the Mount Rushmore. It's Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Ole Anderson, Tully Blanchard.
Shut
That's it. It's the 4 horsemen.
Out of control.
It's the 4 horsemen.
You're out of control.
Tony, I work with a hick.
You really do.
J.J. Dillon made this really easy for us a long time ago by assembling the 4 greatest wrestlers of all time and creating the 4 horsemen.
I did this to myself.
This isn't hard.
It's unbelievable.
This isn't hard.
It really is. You got a bunch of hillbillies. You got a producer with no shoes on running around. This place is, I'm waiting for an actual goat to turn on camera 1 or something like that.
When I told you we had no clue what we were doing.
Yeah, this started in a gym.
Like I was saying, I would heat up those pierogies and start Raw. And I mean, it is the backbone of my show. Only the crossover wrestling fans and Kill Tony fans know it and can see it. The other ones are just marks that have no idea why it excites them when now in the arena shows the giant, I have a giant Jumbotron that you know what I mean? That comes out of my budget. Right. You know what I mean? And I go, let's spring for it. Well, this one's only 20 grand, but this one's 80 grand and it's obnoxiously huge. I go, that sounds like the one.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah,
that's it.
And when their names come, boom, and music hits and doof, all this stuff that doesn't need to be on a comedy podcast at all. But I'm giving those people, the real fans, if it's just the chills for just a second, like, wow, look at this guy coming out to this giant applause with his name in big letters behind him, who we know lived in his van, a year and a half before and was doing 6 open mics a night. And now look at him because they follow the storyline. And I just let them in on these stories because it is a refillable show. And even though they're not obviously wrestling in a ring, the sets are their matches, and it's always different, but it keeps it refillable. But it's literally pro wrestling 101. I mean, it is just never ending storylines. And if something interesting's happening in their life, I'll ask them about it the next week and the week after, because we tape every week, but we do these bonus ones in the arena, which just started off as a one-off. My big comedy agent a year ago, because I go, I want to do an arena. And they're like, okay, that's crazy. Where do you see yourself doing this? I go, Austin, Texas, New Year's Eve. And they're like, you do the show in Austin. Like you do that every week. You have sold out shows. Why would you do it there? And I go, because I want to bring people. Have them come to me. I do my stand-up on the road 2 weekends a year. This is something that I think we can really get to come here. And literally the longest talk on the phone I've ever had with my agent where I'm doing the talking. Like, no, I'm telling you, we can do this. And he goes, are you going to take some shows off so that we can really get the tickets going and this and that? I go, no. At the end of the 10-year anniversary show on June 10th, at the very end, we announced that we're doing an arena in Austin, and I think you'll be surprised. We ended up adding a second show to that. And of course, when it's sold out in a few hours, the agent goes, man, this is one of the best ideas we've ever come up with.
We've ever come up with, right? Yeah.
And so here we are now looking at quarterlies, We're looking at, the LA Forum now in May and MSG in August. And we have another big thing we're going to do in October that we haven't announced yet. And most likely, it looks like we're going to do another New Year's Eve here in Austin. Sweet. So we're going to make that a routine. And who knows? I mean, geez, a New Year's Eve, Austin, Texas, the lights go out, surprise, surprise, a moment. Anything can happen. Who knows down the road?
It will happen. It will happen.
Oh, all right. We've got a commitment here. You need to go to I have not been to a show at the mothership, but that's something I would love more than anything for you to be able to go sit up there on that panel and watch what happens with these guys.
You would love it.
Yeah. I mean, you're already on the table.
Yeah. You're part of the set. You're set. One episode years ago, someone gave us an Undertaker action figure on the show. I can't remember who, but it has stayed right on the side of that bucket. You're hanging off of the bucket. You're the only non, working
Right.
piece of the show that's on the table.
But I think it's kind of, I don't know the right word because I've got a small vocabulary, but you've got the Undertaker hanging off the bucket of people who are literally about to potentially be killed.
Yeah. Yeah. Kill or be killed. Yeah.
And you've got this Undertaker hanging from this bucket of folks that.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is, you've made some careers.
Yeah.
Like, when you gave an opportunity for someone to make a career for themselves. Is what you did.
Oh yeah. I'm just the vessel in between. Because it's like the old days. It's not a team of writers telling the comedians what to do. They're cutting they're writing their own minute, and I'm just bringing them in and putting them in the right part of the show for them to do what they're doing. You know, start the show with a bang, have something in the middle that's great, and obviously end with, something they absolutely
Wrestling
can't miss.
101.
It really is.
It really is.
It is 100%. And it's exciting because it took 10 and a half years for us to kind of fulfill that prophecy. I've been building it for a long time that way, but it was always just in little comedy clubs. So there was no smoke, there was no fire pumping machines, there was no Titantrons, there was no big entrances. So I had to figure out little ways to do it along the way. Like, we used to have these little, anytime a new regular was announced, which only happens once every couple years, we would have these little confetti cannons, that you twist, almost like a gender reveal type of thing. But I would just have two people waiting on each side of the stage. And it would basically be like, okay, when I go like that, you just go poof, poof, and that was it. And now it's like,
It's awesome, man.
Crazy stuff happening. But yeah, it's all wrestling. And you, my friend, I mean, geez, I think we kind of covered this on JRE, but I learned about death from you, and I think probably a lot of people did. You probably get that a lot, right?
Yeah, you know what I get a lot of, and it kind of always catches me off guard. And I had quite a few even when I was active. Is the amount of Make-A-Wish kids that are terminal that want to meet me. And it's like,
you're about to anyway.
right?
Don't worry.
I mean,
the day's coming.
But,
you want to meet two Undertakers?
You're gonna go 1-1 here. But yeah,
Like Hulk Hogan's back here. You want to say, hey,
You want someone with a
he's
little
killed a
hope
lot of
or
careers.
something?
yeah, he's killed a lot of careers.
Yeah, he'll tell you to take your vitamins and say your prayers. Those aren't going to help you at this point. But
yeah, that one always caught me off guard. But and now that I'm doing, the One Dead Man show, is the amount of people that lived through that character that were wanting to hurt themselves.
yeah,
And used that whole thing, that whole character and everything as a weekly escape. Or I had one lady tell me, I was in Philadelphia, I think, and she goes, I had my note, I had my plan, I had everything I was going to do. She was going to kill herself. And she said, the only thing I don't even remember what the storyline was, but evidently it was a good one, because she kept every week coming back because she wanted to see what was going to happen until finally she got through it. But I'm at my meet and greet, right? And, I try to make the meet and greets, I try to make them it's not just like, hey, how you doing? I try to give them a little bit of time. And she starts telling me this story of how, she made it through because of the Undertaker care. And I'm just like, whew, okay. So it really, it can be humbling to know how you affect, because you don't think about it.
oh yeah,
You're going out, you're doing what you love to do. You don't think about maybe the effects that you have on people. And man, it's really been damn.
And I think, you're probably doing, you may not be getting those stories right now, but I imagine there's people that on their way to work, on their way home, whatever, they just aren't having the greatest days and they turn on a
need
Kill
that,
Tony
yeah.
podcast
Oh,
and they can
yeah.
laugh. They can
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah,
go
gives
home
them-
and just check out by watching it on TV or whatever.
Yeah, they
and-
know it. They know it's gonna come out every Monday at 8. That's the thing. We've never not released one Monday at 8, and it's the advice that I give anybody that starts a podcast or wants to even just do a live comedy show. I go, make it weekly, set a time, set a place, because if someone likes your stuff, they're not gonna want to go, okay, oh, it's the second Tuesday of this month. That's impossible. Who's doing that kind of math? But if even if it's a band, it's like, okay, I've told my musician buddies this, that I've made 100 of since moving to Austin, which is like, get in, set it. Set it. Make it Thursdays at 8:30 or Fridays at 2 p.m. Who cares? But as long as people know, then you'll have your fans returning. They'll, it's Pavlov's dogs. Give them what they want. Give them a time. These musicians here in Austin are so bad at promoting themselves. They'll put a post up without even the time or the venue on it.
Yeah.
It's like hilarious. Hey, we're doing a show this week. Good luck. It's hilarious.
There's only 2,000 bars for you to try to find us in.
The live music capital of the world.
Yeah.
We're
You'll figure it
somewhere in
out.
Austin
They'll
today.
find you.
But
Yeah.
Mondays at 8, that's another thing. I mean, it's right on the nose. Like
Yeah.
every other no other podcast, like that's not a thing. But in my world, Mondays at 8 represents something my whole life. And so, I think I told you this one, but I can't remember if we covered this on JRE when we did it or not. But we used to have this upright piano when I was a little kid. It was just there because I'm the youngest of 5. So like I was just stuck in this like old relic museum of a house that everyone else had already lived through and everything. Anyway, so there's this old school upright piano pressed up against these windows, and it had one of those piano benches that open up and where you keep like the songbooks and stuff. And I can't remember what age I was, maybe 6 or 7 or something, when you were going through the Kamala storyline, the first ever Coffin match. And every Saturday morning, he was building this coffin. And I'm realizing then, as like a little tiny kid, I'm like, wait a second. That's like what you go in when you die. Like this is,
He's going to put that guy.
he's going to put that guy in that thing. And then you go in the ground. And then there's that tombstone, there's that rock thing that I see when we drive by on the way to school. Like, there's dead people in the ground. I mean,
This guy
And then
put
there's
in the ground.
and then there's that moment like,
it's
he's going to kill him.
yeah, it's unbelievably overwhelming to a 6-year-old. Anyway, but I was so bought into it. It was all I could think about. I was so obsessed. And so there I was, a little rabble rouser of a kid. I went into the basement, and I grabbed a hammer and nails because you were pounding these nails into the coffin on the promos. And I went up to the piano bench because that was the thing that most resembled a coffin to me at the time, because it went up to my, chest or whatever. And I took the nail and I put it right where the thing was, and I just started pounding it right in there, and another nail, and just pretending to be you. And Tony, what the did you do? I could just hear my mom from the other side of the neighborhood whenever it happened. Oh my God, just nails into it. I mean, old school. I can't remember if it was ivory or whatever it was. There's some old school, real legit wood, because it wasn't easy.
Yeah, no, and it was, and those vignettes that we shot, you could see the breath, like So I'm dressed in my wrestling gear, and it's freaking, it's 20 degrees outside.
You're in Connecticut, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, everything was done in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And I'm freezing my ass off. And we didn't have the budget then. Like we didn't have like a trailer, and that thing. It took hours now because there was week after week after week of what we were, what we were putting out. So I between takes, I would have to like go get in the car, turn the car on, warm up.
Wow.
And then they would like, okay, we're ready for the next shot. And I'm like, oh fuck, I get back out there and it's you're building a casket in spandex with some polyester shirt on and some cheap ass leather gloves. I was like, man, he looks scary. It was like, 'cause he was freaking miserable. But that stuff was so instrumental into the development of that character.
Yeah.
Oh.
You know, I mean, I wouldn't about it. I mean, I was happy that I was working and doing something, but man, it was like everything, like the time where they locked me in the big coffin when I was working, I think Yoko, and all the guys came out and jumped on me, and then my spirit ascended out of the building, and the next night I'm in a cemetery in Connecticut with wind freezing, or wind chill was, flesh freezing, and I'm traipsing through a snow. Same thing in Bruce Pritchard's car. I'm sitting there trying to warm up, and they're like, "All right, I think they're ready for you." I was like, "I don't think I want to do this anymore." It was so cold, but man, it's just what it was.
Is that your earliest memory of him?
I think so. Yeah. Well, I mean, I was already bought in. So the debut was the Rumble.
So I debuted at Survivor Series
That's right.
in '90.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking the Kamala stuff was for, it was SummerSlam is when I actually had the pay-per-view. But we led up to that. That was the final blow-off, and that was at Wembley Stadium with Kamala. So that was the end of that run.
Yeah.
So yeah,
90,
I had gone
91.
through. Yeah. So I had gone through the winter and all that. He was so good too. Like Kamala was the Ugandan warrior, but he was terrified of caskets.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Legit, right? He just didn't want any part of them.
How was he in the ring?
Yeah, when he got to WWE, he was more gimmicky than he was like when he was at Mid-South. Like in Mid-South, he was legit scary, but they kind of when they started doing that kind of stuff and the way he sold it, it kind of became a little bit comedic. But it was, But Kamala could go. Yeah, he was pretty athletic.
Yeah.
And but he did. His eyes would get real big. Like he would see me, and he had to turn to like what was his handler's name, Kimchi, or So you'd be looking. Like, but people, that people picked up on it. It's dude's scared to death.
Oh yeah.
Death looking him in the face.
Oh, it worked.
But he's supposed to be talking to them spirits, and he was supposed to be essentially part of death as well. I mean, the way his character was, and that voodoo and everything else that he did too.
Yeah.
But so Tony, you did you get a job with WWE as a writer?
No.
Or you almost did or something?
No, I almost did. And I could have. And a big part of my pitch was actually, what I'm blanking out right now, but
Undertaker
it was
versus Sting.
It was a Kane Undertaker. What was it? Oh man, gosh darn it, I'm blanking out right now.
I do it all the time.
But it had something to do with, gosh darn it, it had something to do with you and Kane. Yeah, no, it was something that was offered to me, but it would have meant me moving to Connecticut, and I had heard horror stories about the job.
Didn't mean to interrupt, but that's probably the best decision. You ever made was not taking that job.
Yeah,
I tell people all the time, like I don't commit. I would never commit the writers' names to memory because they weren't going to be there that long. I mean, there's been like 3 or 4 that are tenured now, but. It was just like,
you're
gone.
I mean, not everybody's a Vince Russo,
Why you just trying to stir up?
I'm not trying to stir up anything. I just make comments. That's all it is. I just make observation. I see something, I make a comment. That's all it is. And there's nothing, to it. But Tony, if you were, this was something I thought about last night. If you were writing for WWE, I think, I don't know how much you're watching the product today, but The Rock coming back with the bloodline and everything. We were talking earlier, it feels like the Attitude Era again. It feels like late 90s, early 2000s all over again. If you were writing for WWE right now, where could you see The Undertaker? Where could you see that character in today's wrestling? And Mark,
in this chair right here.
I'm not talking about. I'm talking about the character itself. How would the character itself? And Mark, I'd like to hear from you too on this. Like, where would you see the Undertaker's character today? How could he fit into today's wrestling with WrestleMania 40 around the corner? How does Undertaker fit into 2024?
Why you put him on the spot like that?
I'm putting both of you. Y'all have this conversation of where you fit. I mean, he's the master writer over here, you know?
I mean, well, I am. This is completely improvised, and I am on the spot. But there's two places I think you can kind of go with this. In a world where, you want to get tremendous heat. You want to get the world talking. First, I think you bring back Brock Lesnar immediately and just let the crowd go crazy, and he goes blah 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 blah, and I'm here to dominate and nobody's gonna stop me, blah 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 blah. Lights go out. Ultimate revenge match, Lesnar versus Taker, WrestleMania, this and that. But in the modern, if I was stuck to deal with the exact people that are on week to week right now, I mean, it's a tough one, but because they don't have, or at least maybe I don't see, and I'm admittedly not like completely caught up. I'm watching the Cody Rock thing and everything happen from afar, but it doesn't seem like they have a really great dark force. I was a huge part of the reason why I got back into it about whatever it was 8 years ago and watched up until, really it was, again, this sounds cheesy and you're probably not going to believe it, but it was really like you and your official retirement match against AJ Styles was kind of like my retirement match from
wrestling. Yeah.
And that was crazy great. I mean, I was so happy that it was what an unbelievably beautiful frickin' ribbon to put on that thing, especially if it was during the pandemic and there was nothing entertaining going on other than Dana White or other than UFC and what you guys were doing. And
I think, thank you for that. Yeah, we got lucky in the sense that we got to go out of the Performance Center because all the matches like Edge and I think Randy Orton, they had a hell of a match.
Yeah.
But it was so sterile because there's no reaction.
Right.
It was, that we weren't even pumping in noise at that point.
Yeah.
Or didn't have the virtual audience. I mean, it was just them having a match in the Performance Center, a killer match, but there's just no emotion to feed off of. There's nothing, that's the thing that you live for. You can hear
their like bootlaces clanking against the ground and stuff.
Like, we were fortunate enough that we got to go off and then had this, what they call a thematic thing or cinematic. Cinematic is the word I'm looking for, a cinematic match. And
amazing.
It was cool for me because I got to kind of tie in, I got to tie in all the characters into like one. I got to tie myself, the old school Undertaker, the American Badass. Everything got tied together for that match, just due to the fact the content of the interviews and the stuff that AJ was doing. But I felt, that match was obviously supposed to be held in a ring. So we got really lucky that we were able to have like those kind of toys and the atmosphere.
And then you got to sit in the car in between takes and warm up a little bit.
Warm up a little bit because it does get, contrary to what people believe, it does get cold at 3 or 4 in the morning in Florida.
Tony, I don't know if you know or not, what happened at, we talked about this earlier today too, but what happened at 4 o'clock that morning or 3 o'clock?
Yeah, so we were between takes. We were getting ready to go to the big finale off the top of the barn deal there, and it was getting cold. We'd been at it since like, I don't know, I think we started filming around dark, which was around 8 o'clock. So now it's 4 in the morning, and my back, everything is just locking up, and that's like when that's when it finally clicked. Like, this is it, dude. You're not coming back after this one. And yeah, it was just a moment. I was sitting there by myself. It was a moment of pure clarity that just said, "Shit, this is it right here."
Yeah.
And didn't share. I mean, obviously didn't share it with anybody when we got through it. But yeah,
Were you content with that? Or did it make you?
I was happy because of how it was another thing. Like I was really fortunate enough to be involved in so many innovative matches and these crazy storylines, and to be able to do this big cinematic type match, which would add different layers to the product. I was happy with all that. Deep down, I always thought like AJ was the Shawn Michaels of of this generation.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have that kind of match that I had with Shawn with AJ in a ring, but I don't think it would have been as poetic as what we were able to do.
Oh, totally. No, I agree 100. There's nothing you could have done in a ring that would have been like that. I mean, it was magical. And again, your promos, the vignettes, the everything, that's also a part of that element.
Oh, sure.
You know what I mean? The smoke, the darkness, the lighting in the background, all things that, while you're talking about how you got all three of your characters and everything in there, it's like that's a big part of it too, that got to really be captured in the dirt and the bulldozer and the barn and the lighting and the fog. And
It's almost accidentally you had the best ending for that character that I think you could have had.
I think so.
Yeah.
And looking back, I think so. I mean, like I said, we got to incorporate all the. I mean, we had the bike, we had graves, we had the dirt, we had druids, we had every aspect, and
there's something special about being in the ring in front of 80,000 people or whatnot, whatever Raymond James holds. But it's to finish that character the way that y'all did that night, I think was the appropriate match, the appropriate place, everything.
Even the song, like we used Metallica stepped up again and let us use their music, the riding off. The neighborhood that I rode through wasn't real pleased about me riding, blaring that down the road on that bike at 4 and 5 in the morning, but it was very poetic.
They had no idea probably who was on the bike.
was that only a one night shoot?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. We started, like I said, around 8 p.m. I think we finished just before sunup. Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. Your back had to have been locked up.
Oh, it was, I was done. And I was like, there was a couple of things that AJ wanted to do, which would have put a shine, even a bigger shine on me. And I was like, dude, I don't know that I can do it. And, I would hate for, we knew we had something, although it hadn't been edited or anything yet. We knew we had something special. I said, man, I don't want to risk it. Because
were you the one that called AJ, or did he call you?
He called me.
Yeah.
Off of, he just heard something that I had said. It may have been it was in the last ride.
Yeah, it was.
It was
That's
in the
right.
last ride. I was sitting in Vince's office, and they were interviewing me, and he happened to come up on the monitor, and I just ended up saying, like, man, that's the one guy I missed that I would have liked to have worked with. And then I must have said something like, or he felt like I had one more left in, and he called me, and I was like, oh man, because I at that time I was already contemplating, retirement, but I still had the fire, and then he called me, and I was like, man, that's AJ, man, I really want to work with him, so. Yeah, that's how that happened. He ended up calling me and talking me into it.
And you, my memory, again, once my stand-up thing really started taking off, it was so hard for me to catch up. But you did have one WrestleMania against Bray Wyatt, right?
Yeah, so the year after they broke the streak with Brock,
Yeah.
that next year, I think it was in San Francisco, I worked with Bray. which it was, there wasn't a lot there.
Right.
I mean, he was pretty much fed to me to get me back on the.
Right.
I would have loved to have worked a program.
Yeah.
He was one of those guys that, and I talk about it all the time. He thought outside of the box.
Totally. I didn't get to finish what I was saying earlier, where I was getting to the point to where one of the things that got me back into it during that time was him.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like my buddy Matt Edgar was like, dude, there's a new Undertaker. You're going to love him. He's like, there's this other guy that goes, yes, yes, yes. I remember Daniel Bryan being very, everybody else's guy, but he was spot on. When I saw Bray Wyatt come out with that lantern and his Louisiana, Bayou Goons, the Wyatt family, I was in.
Yeah.
Total throwback to your vignettes, like exactly the type of darkness that, gets my attention.
But a different kind of darkness.
Totally.
More of a, I don't know, like a Cape Fear turned way left. I mean, it was really good.
Yeah, it felt like it could be real, like scary real.
Yeah, it was especially the Wyatt family, the initial run.
Yeah.
And then I think they kind of screwed the pooch a little bit when they burned him and then had him come out. But even that, he still made it creepy and different. And but that's just, and I preach it all the time now. It's like, think outside of the box.
Totally.
Because don't emulate.
Yeah.
You gotta think. You can look and take bits and pieces of things like, okay, I see why he's doing this, but if you try to duplicate it, then it's just like it's not gonna. One, it's not original, and two, it's just there's not enough meat left on the bone. But Bray, man, he was special. He really, really was special, and I would have loved to have had a really nice
He did
extended
with
program.
Cena too at that WrestleMania.
Yeah, I mean
that was
like
the
freak
weirdest
show.
like-
Yeah,
yeah.
but even I mean, it was just like captivating. It wasn't a per se wrestling match, but it was entertaining.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the first part of our podcast with Tony Hinchcliffe. I hope you enjoyed. Tune in next Monday for the conclusion of this hilarious podcast with a great guy in Tony Hinchcliffe. I just want to say thank you to First Form and Wiley X for helping support our podcast. And if you'd like to get some 6 Feet Under merch, go to 6feetundermerch.com to pick up your latest 6 Feet Under apparel. Also, if you'd like to submit a question, head over to our Patreon, 6 Feet Under with Mark Calloway. Thank y'all. Tune in next Monday. Be sure to hit that follow button, subscribe button, leave a comment, like us, give us a 5-star rating, all those great things. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.